personal use, just buying and selling vehicles, which may end up being, a little higher quantity than the average person. So they just want to legalize that part of it. And they can speak to that too, if they wish. So one of the questions in the findings of fact was, if we allow 12 vehicles per year, does it matter to the commission if that is, one per month, or if it's 4 in June, July, and August? Does the quantity per month matter to the commission, or do you just want to leave it a total of 12 per year to be in compliance, with the IUP? And then the other thing we need to chat about is the hours of operation. Even though they feel like they really don't need it, it is something I was explaining to them that is beneficial to have in there. So we can chat about that a little bit. Nick and John, did you have any ideas as far as hours of operation?
No, it doesn't really matter that much. We just say maybe 9 to 5. We won't do that, but you can say 9 to 5.
I guess we need to.
The commission has sometimes prohibited Sunday hours. Does it matter to the commission in this case if it's a Sunday selling a vehicle or not?
This is Jason. If you're asking me, I would say no. This feels like a glorified Craigslist, Facebook marketplace operation with limited sales. Nick, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's state law that you can't really sell any kind of titled entity on a Sunday.
Okay, so you'd be okay with omitting Sundays then and just saying 9 to 5 Monday through Saturday?
Yeah, that's fine.
Is that okay with the other commission members?
I have no problem with it.
That's fine.
Okay, so that's item number 1, or condition number 1, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then, let's see, we may want to specify, in condition number 3 on page 2 of the findings, vehicles shall be kept inside the accessory building except for vehicles offered for sale as outlined herein, may be parked on the asphalt area in the front yard, and no more than how many vehicles stored within the outdoor storage area at a time. So, Nick and John, what we try to do as a city is make these IUPs very limiting so that there's later when we come back and look at this, it's very obvious whether you're in compliance or not. We don't like any gray areas, which was why I tried to get a little more detailed than, you may have expected. So, what is your opinion on the outdoor storage? And you want, is that area fine that we've specified? And do you anticipate anything at all? Maybe you don't want anything at all out there. I don't know.
Yeah.
That area is fine. And I don't know, you could say no more than 5, a handful, I guess. I don't think it'll be that much, but somewhere around there, half dozen, a handful.
Yeah, I doubt there's gonna be that many back there.
Yeah.
It's all fenced in too and stuff, really. But
All right, what is the commission's feeling on outdoor storage? Would, let's say, 4 or 5 motorcycles or cars in the back be acceptable or not?
Well, that's all enclosed back there, isn't it?
yep.
Yes.
Nobody would see them anyway.
No, it's all
I'm
covered.
fine with the 5 or 6, whatever they're saying will be stored outside is fine.
I'm okay with the suggestion as well.
Okay,
Sure, I was okay with the, 4 to 5 vehicles, motorized, motorcycle or automobiles.
Right, okay. Okay, so that'll be part of condition 3. And then, do you want to put any limit on how many can be sold in a single month? Or does that not matter?
Carol, I don't see any reason for us to limit per month, but 12 per year. I'm wondering who is going to monitor this?
Well, that's the case with a lot of the IUPs. It's going to be, first of all, complaint-based, which is how we operate on all of our code enforcement. But if the city council were to establish a process for enforcement of IUPs and CUPs, then we would have, let's say, an annual check on different properties. But the way we operate now is on a complaint basis.
My question, this is Commissioner Pirro. My question is directed at Nick and John. I'm wondering, why is 12 okay? As a business that wants to grow and profit, why are you not wanting more than that?
We're not really doing this for profit. I'm doing it for convenience because we have a passion for bikes and stuff like that. So it's just a convenience. I don't see us doing, some of the stuff I own and then I'll get rid of. It just depends on 12. We just picked that number out of the air.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Jeff Pilon.
Oh, Mayor.
So again, commission, as you're making recommendations, remember you want to be specific. I've heard 5 or 6. I've heard vehicles. I've heard motorcycles and cars. I think you need to define vehicles. You need to be specific on numbers. So when you pass it along to the council, there are specific understandings of rather than generalities. We say 5 or 6. If it's so many per year, so many per month. If you sell your 12 in the first month, then there shouldn't be anything else on the lot or there in the other times. You want to be specific. The other thing for Liz is, I think it's a little different. We do have complaint driven on the general ordinances throughout the city. But when we issue IUPs, there are conditions that are to be met and maintained. While we aren't releasing those specifically, I don't think we'd be waiting for somebody to say, I think we're up at 50 motorcycles, now we should complain. IUPs are a little different because we do set conditions for those. So I do think you want to be able to track reasonably what it is we're doing.
I agree. Yeah, that would definitely be a positive. I don't want to step out of line and, do anything that hasn't been directed or whatever. But if we had a process for, treating everybody the same and checking up on all of our IUPs and CUPs would be the best. But yes, you're right. The one of the conditions is compliance at all times. And if you're not in compliance with the approved conditions, then you're risking the loss or the revocation of the IUP or CUP.
So, Mr. Chair, Jeff Pilon again, the liaison.
Mayor.
One of the things we do, like with the threshing show, with the Historical Power Association, is they proactively tell us what they're doing. So they have a limited number of activities that they can schedule there. So they tell us what they're going to be doing. So maybe you include that as part of the IUP is as activity takes place, the city's notified. So if 3 months into the year you've got 12 done, the city's notified without having to spend energy to go out and follow up on it. Or wait. So in the threshing show, that's what they do. They're proactive. Here's what we're planning on. And when they hit that point, they tell us we've got our 6.
Mayor Pilon, you were
Yeah.
cutting out there. I couldn't hear everything you were saying.
Sorry, I'll try and get closer and see if that helps. That any better?
Well, I Can't tell until you talk more.
Liz, did you get what he was saying?
Yes, I could hear you.
Yes, I think Dale's internet is a little weaker or something because when he speaks, it's kind of broken too. So maybe when we're speaking to Dale, we need to slow down or something.
Were the rest of the commissioners able to hear?
You're cutting out too. Also. Kelly's coming in real good. So's Liz.
I was able to hear Jeff just fine, Barry Wagner.
I heard him fine too. So,
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
this is Ms. Stockman. So, I agree with, Mayor Pilon's comments with, being specific. So if 5 vehicles, no more than 5 vehicles stored outside behind the building. And as far as vehicles go, I would like to be consistent with our zoning ordinance, so that would be cars or pickup trucks or motorcycles that don't exceed 20,000 pounds or, which is a standard vehicle. Not a work type vehicle or trucks of that, anything more than 4 wheels. Does that sound acceptable? If we specify that?
Miss Pirro here. Yes, I believe that the gross vehicle weight is definitely something that would consistently define a vehicle for them. And what else was I gonna say? I had something else I was going to say. Sorry. That would limit an RV possibility. Yes.
Right, they could have, this is Ms. Stockman, they could have an RV just based on regular residential standards. Outdoor storage, there's recreational vehicles allowed, but that would be separate from their IUP.
This would I'm sorry, Commissioner Pirro here. This would also limit a vehicle only as a vehicle, not as a trailer as well, correct? Because it would have to have its own means of moving, have a motor.
Yes, well, there again, I guess we could include, if you wanted to include trailers and or vehicles being outside, but there again, as under the residential standards, a trailer, let's say a car hauling trailer or a snowmobile trailer are considered part of the recreational vehicle ordinance too. So we could address it a couple different ways. If you maybe in this case, because the intent is the buying and the selling, we should just limit it to the vehicles, and then the outdoor storage for the residential use would be the same as everybody else's, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Does that make any sense?
Dale, did you get that?
Yeah, I got that. It sounded good. Yeah, it makes sense.
Any other comments from the members?
Liz, Barry Wagner here. So you're going to, where you have motorcycles and or vehicles, and some places you just have vehicles, you're going to have some definition for what the vehicles are and be consistent with that?
Yes, we'll take that definition that we have in the zoning ordinance and insert it here. So the gross vehicle weight no more than 20,000. And then, yeah, we can state motorcycles, cars, or pickup trucks, or we could even specify, the class of vehicle with I believe it's class 3. It's got, 4 wheels. Class 4 and 5, I think, are more. six-wheeled or whatever. But yeah, we should just insert a definition in here.
Yeah, let's set it in a definition. To clarify where I said 5 or 6 before, let's put in 5. That was what they had said.
Okay, that's condition 3, yep.
Yep.
And then condition 4 is how many per month, if that matters to anybody. We said no.
Commissioner Pirro. No, it's not a maximum per month. If they were to hit their 12 in the first 2 months, the only thing I can possibly say is that we definitely want to hold them to their number 3, the vehicles in storage, to that quantity, not getting any larger if they've met their quantity for the year.
Okay. So no more than 12 sold, Biden's purchased and sold. No more than 5 stored outside. And let's see, item 5. How,
Commissioner Pirro here. And I would suggest no more than 2 vehicles at one time.
in the front for sale?
Yes, yes.
Does everybody agree with that?
Sounds good to me.
Jason?
Probably. Yeah, it
That
sounds
would be
good.
fine. They should be leaving spots for people to come look at them.
Right.
Sure, okay. Yeah, there's a large paved area in front there. Any other discussion? Maybe we could have Ellen read that letter at this time?
Oh, we got some other things to cover here first.
Dale has the
I
process.
do, Dale?
Yeah, I was gonna ask the clerk, because we verify the legal publications and mailings and postings that have been completed.
Yes.
And, we could read I think we could read the letter now, and then we can open it to the public.
Okay. All right. Everyone hear me?
Yes.
Dear Planning Commission, here are my concerns about a transfer of state automobile license, dealer license to buy and sell motorcycles and occasional automobiles at John and Nicholas Rohak property at 21226 St. Francis Boulevard, PID 13-22-25-12-0010. Selling motorcycles and an occasional automobile may require solvents to clean parts like hydrochloric acid, changing antifreeze, and brake fluid. All these need to be disposed of properly. These cannot be poured into the ground, contaminating soil and water. Often businesses like this also require a painting booth, which uses paint and fillers to repair damage. All chemicals need to be handled properly. This property has an underground spring which empties into a large pond on my property. I am concerned about my well-being and my well water. Finally, selling only one automobile makes no sense. I have written 3 different business plans. A business is to make a profit and grow over time. Most businesses take at least 5 years to make a profit or fail. How long are you going to allow this interim use permit to last? How will the business be monitored to see that fluids are being disposed of properly? Please let me know. Sincerely, Zita Sanzoni, 21118 St. Francis Boulevard, Northwest. Now then.
Okay, after she read that letter, is there anybody on the website here who wants to make a comment to this, this request?
Mr. Chair, this is Ms. Stockman.
Yes.
I would suggest we just add to be safe, no vehicle repair or body work The Rohawk said that won't be a concern. And we could certainly reference storage of chemicals as required by MPCA. They do not anticipate any chemicals beyond just normal household use, a can of gasoline and, some motor oil. They don't intend to have any repair service or body work. So, but we could certainly add that as a precautionary measure.
Liz, I guess I'm okay adding the auto body repair, but in terms of standard chemicals, I mean, this is no different than any other neighbor that's got vehicles. I mean, anybody with a vehicle could dump the antifreeze and oil on the ground if and it's not monitored. I mean, we expect people to be good stewards of the environment here, and we're not policing that across the board. So I don't know why we would write something in for a specific use here. I mean, understand if it's paint and body work, there's EPA, there's more EPA regulation in that venue, but there's nothing to say that the farmer next door can be dumping antifreeze out when he's changing oil and servicing his equipment each year.
Right, and if you note number 13 on the page 3 of the conditions, the city council may revoke the interim use permit upon violation of any condition herein or any city ordinance or any law of the state of Minnesota. So in that sense, the MPCA's regs are covered.
Mr. Chair, this is Jeff Phelan again.
Yes, Mayor.
For the commission to consider, though, this is one of the values of an IUP. You put the conditions in there. While it's true, anybody in town could be dumping chemicals. You're saying if you're going to operate this type of business here, just make sure you consider it as one of the conditions, because then if there is a problem, you don't have to go back to state to enforce it. You just go back and say that's a condition, and you're abiding by it or you're not. Yes, a farmer could dump chemicals in the ground, but this is a request for an interim use permit. So that's where you have the opportunity to put in conditions that are enforceable without having to go to court. Or the commission at least considers.
Well, with the pollution control agency, will they periodically check these different businesses that are running? Doesn't the pollution control agency come in and check them?
No, not in this case. This is not a big enough operation, Dale, for that to happen unless there were some sort of a complaint.
So what could we put in there to sort of satisfy with the mayor's suggestion here?
Well, it doesn't hurt to add a condition
Dumping.
prohibiting vehicle repair or body work and storing chemicals, solutions, gasoline in compliance with MPCA standards. It just gives you an added, the more detail, the better in these IUPs. So it certainly doesn't hurt.
Could you put something in there about dumping any products out on the ground anywhere or in the building to have a storage containers for them if they do?
Well, that's going to be a violation no matter who's doing it, And that would, if we're referencing storage, and we can reference storage and disposal properly, how about that?
That sounds better.
Yeah, that makes some sense, and then that would cover the getting rid of those things properly. Any other thoughts?
Pardon me?
Any other thoughts or concerns?
Does the applicant have anything to say here at this point?
Oh, we don't.
Okay. it looks like we discussed this fairly thoroughly. Is there any more things we need to discuss about this, this request?
Did you open the public hearing? We do have a couple residents I noticed that are listening. See if anyone else had comments.
Yeah, I did ask that one, so I'll ask it again. Does anybody have any comments you want to make?
Call in user 4 is Barry. You have some comments?
I'm here, but no comment.
Okay.
Okay, if there's no comments, nobody, anything else, any questions to ask here, the applicants? Does the planning and zoning have any questions to ask? Further
So
questions?
Ellen, are call-in user 5 and 6, are their mics active?
I can unmute them. Calling user 5, did you have any comments? Calling user 6, you have any comments?
Those could be some new add-ins for one of the next two projects also, I'm guessing, but
Okay,
All right.
okay, if we have no more questions here to ask on the planning and zoning, we'll close the meeting then. No more questions?
Close the public hearing, you mean?
Yeah, we'll close the public hearing. Now we'll act upon that, on this request. I don't know if I got everything wrote down here, but Liz, would you read back all the things we discussed doing with this?
Before you get to that, Liz, can I ask a couple of questions?
sure.
Again, this is Mayor Pilon. There was a note in here that the lean-to was legally non-conforming.
Okay, yes.
Didn't we have a problem with that lean-to when it was the previous owner? Because the wall of it is actually the fence on the property
The
line.
wall is what?
Isn't the wall of that lean-to the fence on the property line?
Yes, the wall's right on the property line.
And that's one of the problems we have with the previous owner is that it was not legally set back from the property line because it's actually using a fence as a wall of the building. That was one of the issues we had with the previous owner, not being an acceptable structure. Has that changed?
No, I believe it's the same as it was. Would you concur it's the same as it was when you bought it, Nick?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know exact property lines, but I know that the existing neighbor does have a white fence on the property line behind the actual lean-to.
But yes, it's the same as when he bought it. We did not change anything.
No, it's
and
all
it-
been
it's all
existing.
existing. We didn't touch it.
Okay, so Liz, you may want to check what the situation was there before because that building was has been brought up previously. Just make sure that it's legally non-conforming. Was it designated as legally non-conforming back then?
We bought it the way it is, and that's what it is. So we should have done it before they sold it.
Yeah, that's a tough one to address, after the fact, because the Rohawks didn't create the problem. And just because the previous owner didn't correct it, I don't know if we've ever had documentation as to, when it was done or how long it's been there. That's a tough one. I do believe it is a few feet off the lot line, but the previous building official was considering it a structure just because it had a top. I believe it's like a fence with a partial shelter. It's not like four walls though and a roof, so it's a little wishy-washy. I guess, it's tough to require them to change it when it was like that when they bought it. I mean, generally we allow legally non-conforming structures to stay. We have many of them throughout the city. And I guess it would be tough, I think, to require those changes when, you know, this particular, I guess, request doesn't necessarily relate. It's somewhat of a benefit there, but, I mean, certainly the fence is,
I would say the wall's benefit
you
too.
know,
It's a
about
privacy wall.
the shelter part of it, but
Nick, go ahead.
Oh, I was just adding to it. Yeah, I'd say that the wall is more of a benefit than anything else anyway, because it just creates more privacy anyway. So
It's like one big privacy fence.
if you recall, you know, the previous property owner had a lot more going on back there. And had other violations other than, well, a lot of violations. So, I don't know, I guess it would be for council to discuss too, but I would recommend that we leave that alone. If you'd like to, include, you know, getting
Do it.
attorney's opinion on it, however, you could potentially do that and ask him what your options are.
That might be a good idea to get his opinion.
What we're doing right now with the dealer license has nothing to do with that lean-to.
Well, if you want, if the commission would like the motion to include the question asked to the attorney, you certainly can, and then the final decision is made by the council, so it would be discussed again anyway. So it's up to the commission, I guess,
Final decision on what?
on this. This is the planning and zoning meeting, and then there's a council meeting for the final vote on this project, IUP.
good.
Dale?
I guess my input is that should be a separate discussion from this IEP. It feels like if they bought the place and it didn't get, and it passed it passed all the inspections, it passed the title background. I don't know that it should come up in a IUP or for selling motorcycles in the front yard.
I would agree. I think it has no relevance to what we're doing, Barry Wagner.
Commissioner Pero, yes, it has no bearings in this IUP, and if we want to further discuss it at a later time, we can.
Sounds good.
Is that the feeling of everybody? Because this is actually, I think the city council could be, if they want to check into it, they could. What's the general opinion? You just leave it as it is, or to just have the lawyer check into it? No, nobody's saying anything.
Nobody wants to. So the 4 commission members don't have a concern about it. I guess we'll just leave it at that and make your recommendation. The council can ask for attorney input if they choose.
Okay. Okay.
And then Liz, I have one other question. And on the site plan that you have there, dated March 2nd, 2020.
Yes.
There are containers there as well out by the drive or
It's
the
like,
out there.
talk about, you want to make a town area business friendly. Ooh, I've been around with this for
There
52
are
minutes.
containers right now, you're saying outside?
I don't know what, there's something back there on where the track is.
Oh, this is an older aerial photo. So
March
those,
2nd, 2020 is what it said.
no, that's when it was printed. But the
That's
aerial,
what I'm asking. So is that still the current? That's still accurate?
so the Rohawks, do those containers in the rear belong to you?
I mean, they are Jerry Bauer's property. He's left them on the existing property when I purchased the land. All it is like it's basically at the back end of a storage truck, and he set it on the ground basically.
Oh, okay. I was not understanding that those were still there. So yeah, those are definitely illegal.
He just had no way of removing them when he sold the property, so I don't know what was going on with all that. But yeah, it's just one little storage container back there, I guess.
There's just one, or because the aerial photo
No,
shows
there's
three.
two back there. Yeah, there's I guess I didn't really. They're kind of connected to each other, but it's just a bunch of Jerry Bauer's old. I don't even know what's in it. They've been sitting there prior to when I purchased the property.
We are getting way off the subject here.
Mr. Rohak?
Yes.
Actually outdoor storage like that, which sits upon the ground. Can
It's
be,
not on the ground. It's on wheels.
well, I mean, yeah, so anything that's not a structure, I would call the lean-to thing a structure versus a vehicle or a container or something else that's illegal. So I would argue that those containers need to go. And
How would
not,
that work if if they're already there when I purchased the house?
Yeah, I'll talk to my attorney about that and see what he says. They were there when he bought the house. If you want to take them, you can have them.
I just have no way of removing
Yeah,
them.
so I'll check with my attorney and see what he's a very good land attorney. We dealt with him before. You guys have dealt with him before.
okay, so I guess I would recommend then adding a condition that those be removed, or unless the city wants to address it as a code enforcement issue separately, but if we're approving new outdoor storage for this project and we have a violation,
Isn't that within the fenced area we're talking though, not outside the fenced area?
right.
This is outside the fenced area, way in the back there.
Well, tell you
No, I
what,
know, but
tell you what, why don't we table this? And I'm going to talk to my attorney and then we'll get back to you, okay? Because I think this is getting way out of hand again. And I want to just go nice and smooth, but hey, if this is that big of a deal, table it and I'll talk to my attorney and then we'll get back to you.
you want to table it until May then?
We can table indefinitely. I'm getting a little upset with this. We did something simple and easy that should have took 15 minutes, and we're going on over an hour and a half now because we're doing this video chat. So I don't appreciate what you're doing here. We're trying to do things the right way, and I see that's not the right way.
Well, but you have to understand, Mr. Rohak, that we're trying to help you and have you, how can we
Well,
request that
like I
you-
said, I'm going to talk to my attorney. I'm going to get Jerry Bauer involved. He'll talk to his attorney, and then we'll keep on going on this.
Okay, if you want to work out the details and then come back next month, that's fine.
I appreciate it, though. I mean, this went way overboard. I thought this was going to go easy, trying to do it the right way, and here's what happens. Go way off the subject, trying to talk about a lean-to that's been in when we bought the property. Now you're trying to nitpick this. What are you going to nitpick next? Or there's some gravel on the road that you don't like?
But
Okay, somebody can make a motion then to continue this until May.
Okay. So,
Hey,
Thank you.
Liz.
Thank all you guys very much for your time. I appreciate you.
Liz, hey, this is Jason. Can we make a motion on the IUP and then we could deal with, you guys can deal with the buildings and the other stuff separately? Because it really has nothing to do with what they actually showed up for. So I would propose we make a motion approving the interim use permit for the motorcycle sales and the car sales with the stipulations that you provided on number of vehicles parked, proper disposal of fluids, et cetera, and we vote on that, and then the team can talk to Nick and his partner on how they want to handle the buildings as a separate issue, but it doesn't have anything to do with the IUP on, I want to sell 12 motorcycles a year.
In some ways I agree, in the other ways I disagree, Jason, because if you're approving new outdoor storage for a property that's not in compliance now, I would never recommend that. So I understand that it was there and it's not necessarily their fault or whatever, but the outdoor storage sitting there is different than a legally non-conforming structure.
So I appreciate that, but I would propose we vote on it, let the council approve it or not approve it. And you can take the storage as a separate issue. And if that is a big deal to the city council, they can go forward. But I guess I agree that this team showed up with an IUP for selling a few motorcycles and have a plan for storing them, have a plan for selling them, and we should vote on that. And if there's a separate issue on compliance with 2 storage sheds that were there when they bought the place, that should be a separate issue.
That's okay, if you want to move ahead that way, or you could add something that is as simple as saying that the city council, look at that or include it in investigating that or whatever. So that's fine if you want to go that route too.
So I guess I want to make a motion that approves the IUP for John and Nicholas Rohak for their property, for extended home business on selling motorcycles with the stipulations that were outlined on max number of units, max number of sales, proper disposal of fluids, and proper storage of the vehicles.
Okay, yes. Motion's been made.
okay, the motion's been made. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Pirro will second that motion.
Okay, now we can have some discussion. Jason, would you like to add that in there where the council should be checking into that, those trailers and stuff is sitting back there because it's not in compliance? Just a reminder to them to be able to check on it.
No, I don't want to add it in. I think if someone did a flyover of Nowland Properties, you'd see a lot of that. So I think it has nothing to do with the IUP that they've recommended.
I agree with you, but the thing is I'm concerned about is,
Thanks.
if the city's willing to do something about it, they can do it without us having it on the motion.
Right. See that?
Discuss, so they'll be able to read that. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Is there any more discussion?
Mr. Chairman, Barry Wagner. I'm fine with passing it as Mr. Alders stated. I don't know if there was an inspection done of the site for the IUP. They should have been caught then and addressed even before it even got to this meeting. The meeting is in the proper place to bring that up. If it's noticed at the meeting, it should be followed up separately afterwards. I don't think it has anything to do with what they're asking for, but it is something that should definitely be followed up on, but not part of the motion.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote then. Clerk, you want to call for roll?
Barry Wagner,
Approved.
Jason Alders,
Approved.
Kelly Perro,
Approved.
Dale Ames,
Disapprove.
3 ayes, 1 no.
So it
Motion
passes.
passes.
Okay. Now we'll open the next public hearing. By the way, he knows he has to go to the next city council meeting on this.
May. I'm just curious if Nick and John are still wanting to withdraw this, or is this gonna be okay with them?
What was that? Repeat. We didn't hear you.
You had originally said something about withdrawing. Is this okay to just move forward as they're proposing?
Yes, we can just move forward with this.
Move forward with it, yeah, because we're getting way off the subject. We got to stick to the subject and only the subject.
The next council meeting is May 12th.
Okay. So we'll go to our next public hearing. The public hearing is intern use permit by Walter McCullough Fleet for property located at 76770 Old Viking Boulevard, PIN number 21-33-25-31-0007 for construction of a 30 by 42 accessory building 135 feet from the ordinary high water mark of Bass Lake, 15-foot variation from 150-foot shoreline setback required. The billable area on this site is strictly limited by woodland, trees, and the shape of the lot. The previous variance was approved for the house setback from OHMWM in 2015. So we're going to ask the at this time the planner Stockman, if she'd give the information she has.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Mr. Cleath is asking for a 15-foot variance. The normal setback from the ordinary high water mark for all structures is 150 feet. And the proposed setback for the accessory building is 135 feet. And as was stated, he was approved in 2015 for a 50-foot variance for the residence. The proposed shed is located 30 feet from the adjacent wetland, which is our typical minimum setback for a structure. So that is positive, and that gives us the 135-foot setback. You'll see here, this is shown at 130 feet, but it was moved back, and this survey on the left is correct, showing it at the 135-foot setback. So the photos, he did submit some elevation drawings of the proposed building, which coordinate with his house. He's quite surrounded by wooded areas and quite a distance from any neighbors. He's got kind of a long, skinny lot to the north, and then he's next to the threshing grounds to the east here. And more than 100 feet from his southerly neighbor, and then the lake on the west. So he's kind of hidden back in there. So the commission's job is to determine if he meets those variance criteria that are outlined in the report, and whether there's any additional screening or anything that would be desired to ameliorate the effects of this variance and whether he is like or unlike other properties in the vicinity. But our office feels that he is in conformance with those criteria. And generally, as far as accessory buildings go, this would be the only one typically allowed here, and it's not excessive in size. He does have almost a 10-acre parcel, so, or slightly over 10 acres actually. So a normal 10-acre property would have unlimited numbers of structures and height. But with the limited lot shape and wetlands and trees, it's tough even to get this in here. So I do think it's a reasonable request. A 30 by 40 is not excessively sized. So our office would recommend approval. Thank you.
Okay, is that all, Liz?
Pardon me?
Is that all you had?
Yes, you could open it up for, or open the public hearing or open it for discussion, whatever you prefer.
Okay, I'm gonna ask Skip, is there any added comments you want to make or statements here?
Walter? Just a minute, let me turn you on. You're muted.
Oh, there it goes.
Okay.
Oh, I think it's pretty straightforward. Liz did a good job putting the packet together. And I think the building would just be in the best position there. I'm wanting to keep away from the wetland and on a dry high spot. So I think it's the best spot on the property for the building.
Yeah, you don't have too much choice there.
No. I'm trying to make it as small as I can. It's lower with lower walls, so it'll kind of.
Yeah, because right out there, there's lowland right close to that slough too, isn't there?
Yep.
Because we walked across there one time. I remember it was pretty low right there.
Yep, to the threshing show side. Yeah, it's pretty low and wet there. So I'm trying to keep it as far away from the wetland as I can.
I'm going to ask the clerk to verify that she's had the legal publications and mailings and postings if they've been completed.
Yes.
Okay. Now, at this time, is there anybody on the public that wants to make any comments here?
If you'd like to comment, you need to unmute your microphone if you're trying to.
I have to unmute mine.
Well, yours is fine, Dale.
Now he muted himself.
I got it.
Oh.
Dale, where'd you go?
We, as a planning and zoning, have any discussions, questions we have here to ask Mr. Cleet? If not, again, I'll ask the general public out there if they have any comments. Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. Now we'll act upon it. Would somebody like to make a motion to accept this?
Liz, based on your review, does this meet the guidelines for our practical difficulties?
I think it does because the house was also, it had to be, it was closer than it's supposed to be, right?
Yeah, correct. It's just a tough site all around with the shape and the lake setback and the wetlands. When the Cleese were proposing the home 5 years ago, we had even more stringent wetland setbacks that have since been changed. So I believe they were like 50 or 75 feet from the wetland, which would have made it pretty much unbuildable. But the fact that he's meeting that wetland setback now positive. And the fact that he's, still, it's only a 15-foot variance. And the house was approved at a 50-foot variance. So I do think it's reasonable. And, the biggest thing is that these factors are not factors that were caused by him. They're related to the configuration of the site and the environmental features.
Okay.
Somebody would they like to make a motion to accept this permit? I'll make the motion that we accept it. Does anybody second it?
I'll second it, Barry Wagner.
Motion been made, second. Is there any further discussion? We'll call for the vote.
Kelly Piero,
Approve.
Dale Ames,
Yes.
Jason Alders,
Approved.
Barry Wagner,
Approve.
unanimous.
Okay, it carried. Okay, Skip knows enough. He's got to go to the city council now. Skip used to be in the planning and zoning. Now we'll go to the next public hearing.
Oh, I waved my hand.
Pardon me? I didn't hear you. Skip.
Oh, no, I just wanted to say thank you to you guys for having the meeting today.
Okay.
You're welcome.
We'll go to the next public hearing now. The next one has to do with a ordinance amendment to consider change to section 10-3, street servicing and street construction standards for a minor subdivision of no more than 3 new lots, which would direct the dedication of right-of-way, but delay street construction till a later date as triggered by the future subdivision. Now I'll turn it over to our planner this time, Planner Stockman.
Okay, thank you. So right now, this subdivision ordinance requires that all new public streets be paved with asphalt. Doesn't matter if they're 300 feet long or, or a full through street. We've had several requests in the last couple of years for people either wanting or needing a flag lot. We've had several situations where family members are splitting and want to have a relative or child build on the property, and the street construction standards are considered a burden in that regard. When you're subdividing just 1 or 2 lots. So when we were talking about it at a work session in March, it was suggested that we proceed with a draft and let's look at how, what the possibilities would be, or consider amending the ordinance. So this is the first draft of an ordinance that would allow the city council to defer the paving of local streets and local streets only as part of minor subdivisions involving no more than 3 lots. So it could be a minor subdivision. It could be a platted property, but still no more than 3 buildable lots. And that's including all lots with an existing home as well as proposed vacant lots to be built upon. So there is there are conditions in here for conditions which require it to be residentially zoned. As I stated, a division not more than 3 buildable lots. We would ask for the right-of-way to be dedicated for public use, which basically holds it until such time as the road is constructed and accepted by the city, and then it would be publicly maintained at a later date. So the ordinance is geared toward allowing a private shared driveway within the 66-foot right-of-way for use basically in the interim. And what would trigger the construction of that street is further subdivision of the property. So that we would deed restrict the property, similar to what we did for the Holzum property. And what happens sometimes is that it's it's something that could become a burden to the next person down the road who is paving the street in front of the 1 or 2 lots that were split previously. So it's somewhat of a trade-off for the property owners or the families. It would apply to everybody. It's not, it can't be just geared toward certain types of properties. It has to be all residential properties have the same opportunity. So if you do want to allow a shared driveway within that right of way in the interim, there was also discussion about whether we have at the present time or at the time of the first subdivision asked that the base and the sub base be installed for that road. And the city engineer was saying that, well, it would be nice to have, part of that big job done, because sometimes that's the expensive part of the road. But if it sits there for 20 years, it may not be any good when they go to pave it, or it may have to be redone, 20 years down the road. So item 4A is something to discuss. And then item 4B, C, and D are proposed conditions where we would require emergency vehicle turnarounds and an encroachment agreement, which allows that person to basically use the public right-of-way for private driveway, and then specifying a maintenance agreement requiring the people that share the driveway to have a maintenance agreement be reviewed by the city attorney. So again, the properties that have potential of being subdivided further would be the ones deed restricted, and whichever one would subdivide first at a later time would be the one that would have to pave the road and then be allowed to extend it or do whatever from there. So that's the gist of this, is that we'd basically be deferring the paving part of the road and not accepting the road until a later date.
Dale?
So first draft, open to any comments, suggestions.
I'm going to ask the clerk to verify that legal publications and mailings and posting have been completed.
Yes.
Okay. Now, we got to open this up to the public too. Does anybody in the public have any comments they'd like to make? I know there's others on there, so. Okay. Do we as a committee have more questions or discussion here on this ordinance?
So Liz, if I'm reading this right, we don't make any stipulation if it's a dividing lots that roll onto an asphalt road or a gravel road. This is if it's somebody subdividing their property and it's less than 3 lots, they can choose to have, I would say, more of a general purpose gravel road that may or may not meet city standards until they choose to subdivide it further. Is that right?
Well, it would basically be allowing people to construct a shared driveway within a public right of way, and we'd be allowing that until the road was built to city standards. So it's kind of just deferring construction of the road until a later date. You're allowing the split, you accept the right of way itself, which was why I included this new definition at the very top of the ordinance. So right of way held in trust for public use under the jurisdiction of the city through an approved subdivision, not necessarily built, accepted, or maintained by the city, shall be considered a public street for the purposes of this chapter. Because some, what we run into is people not having the required amount of street frontage. So if they're creating the street frontage, this would be deferring the actual paving of the street until a later time. So it does, it's not that it's not going to get done necessarily, but the burden is on the next person rather than on the person doing the splitting right now.
Commissioner Pirro here. How is this defined as in timeframes? There is no time frame?
No, the trigger is typically who you don't allow any further subdividing until, that's what the deed restriction is. So you don't allow any further subdividing. You could do it on a time frame basis. You could delay it for, let's say, 5 years or something like that. But I don't know, we'd have to talk to the attorney about that too, because, how do you, if they don't do it at that 5-year point, what's your leverage? If they're looking to split more lots, that's kind of your leverage at that time.
Is there a chance we can postpone this discussion until we potentially can meet in person? I just lost about 2/3 of the discussion because my internet blanked out. So it doesn't feel like this is critical for business for now and next week. I'm proposing we table this until we can meet back as a team and discuss this in person.
This is Commissioner Pirro, and I have had a lot of breakups too in my internet, but I'm trying to follow along. I'm trying to understand, we don't have, or in our ordinance right now, we don't allow shared driveways. How does that transition into this ordinance as to be partially okay then? I don't understand how we allow it without allowing it.
So the scenario is somebody has 40 acres and they want to subdivide it into, they want to split off 2 lots for their kids, right? And they don't necessarily want to pull in a fully paved road, which is what's in our ordinance today, because they're subdividing their property. So is there some tool that would give them the opportunity to do something less than a full asphalt road, which, if you subdivide your property, today's guidelines tell you that you need to bring it up to city standards, which is a certain tonnage road with asphalt. So the last discussion was, but does that make sense if you're subdividing in an area that would drain onto an asphalt road? Or if you have somebody that wants to split off a lot or 2 for their kids, So this was the proposal that was back from Liz. I mean, I'm not disagreeing that it's not a great first pass, but, I would like to talk through okay, what are the 2 or 3 different scenarios that the team can think of that this can apply? And then likewise, what are the rules that people are going to try to get around because we have this in place?
Yes, I agree. There's a lot of questions that fly through the head.
This is Ms. Stockman. So we do allow shared driveways. I think what Ms. Perro is referring to is flag lots. We limit the flag lots, except by conditional use permit. And, one of the situations where I see this as a challenge is when there is, let's say, only one lot at the end, which may be a 10-acre lot that could be split in half. You don't want all the burden of paving the entire road on this last person at the end of this right-of-way. But when you're looking at larger properties that have potential for multiple lots, you have a way to cover those costs by, selling those lots later. Now, there's no question that, you are sort of passing the buck in a way. We talked about requiring or allowing people to construct a gravel surface, but cul-de-sacs, whether they're temporary or permanent, are a pain to maintain for the maintenance staff, especially with the plowing in the winter. And so plowing a gravel cul-de-sac is harder than plowing the paved cul-de-sacs. That was one thing we heard. But yeah, I guess that's one other thing to think about is, there's a lot of gravel driveways that go out onto paved roads, so I'm not, I guess, as concerned about that. I would personally like to see the current subdividers put in base and subbase, so that they're contributing something. But, Shane's comment as far as when the next subdivision will occur is somewhat legitimate. But, yeah, it's a tough situation. Some cities just say no, plain old no, it's got to be paved or don't split your land. And, other cities are more lenient. So it's just all kind of a personal decision. I don't know. I guess I would encourage you to at least comment or think about or give some direction, whether it be, any revisions or research or anything to move it along. I think, with the subdivision season coming up, it might be beneficial to kind of figure it out.
So Liz, we had a proposal for subdivision at the last meeting that we had in person. So I know that some of that discussion was sparked from that potential subdivision. So does that help that landowner? Does this proposal help that landowner? And if so, what's the pros and cons of that, as we apply this new ordinance to that landowner?
This would be applicable in that situation.
And why would it be applicable in that situation?
And what'd you say, why?
Yeah, why does it work for that situation? What was the scenario?
Here, I'll bring up that picture and maybe it will jog memories, because that was way back in February. So this is, you've got 4 total lots. But if you recall, they were talking about making this 4th lot an outlot, meaning it can't be developed until it's subdivided further. This large lot on the south has its own frontage. So they really only need street access for lot 2. So they'd be looking at, I don't know, almost 800 feet if the cul-de-sac had to go to the end of lot 2. It'd be, an 800-foot cul-de-sac for the benefit of, 1 lot at this time. It's,
So in this scenario, with your proposal, who owns clearing the street? Who owns clearing the snow and maintaining that road?
so all we have is the right of way. We have this on paper. The cul-de-sac would likely end here. If lot 3 became an outlot, cul-de-sac would end at the terminus of lot 2. The maintenance would all be private. We do not accept that road. The road is not built or accepted by the city. So it's basically just a driveway built to whatever standards we, specify, or possibly none if we don't want any base or sub-base in there. They maintain it as a shared driveway.
And we would take it over at what point? If lot 3 became a future development, then we would need to take it over, and then they would need to build it up to current city code. Is that correct?
Correct. That's correct. If lot 3 or lot 4 were to split down the road, that would trigger construction of that road and then acceptance by the city. And it would be extended as needed to provide access to the new lots.
And the trigger is 3 lots on a property? Is that what triggers it, more than 3?
No,
Well, it's-
trigger is, even if you were just to split 1 additional lot, that would trigger it. So I'm saying that the initial split, like now, where you're deferring it, is a maximum of 3.
Yeah, the way you have it written is if you have a maximum of 3, it can be a driveway, if you will, correct?
Right.
And if it goes beyond more than 3 lots, so like if I had I don't, but say I had 40 acres, I theoretically have 8 buildable lots. If I wanted to subdivide a couple off besides my place, I could get away with a driveway, if you will. If I wanted to subdivide it off into the full 8 lots, I would have to provide a now then code city street.
Well, you would have to still determine, we would still ask you to prepare a concept plan for your 40 so that we knew how it all laid out.
Okay?
Just like the Lysticos did for their
Okay.
80 acres, okay? So that we know you're putting this right away in the correct location or something that makes sense.
Okay.
So, but then, yes, we accept the right of way under this scenario, and you deal with the private driveway until such time as you split further, right?
Do we have, in a scenario like Liz, do you have it written in that it at least needs to be a certain width with a certain size cul-de-sac at the end so that we can get emergency equipment turned around and potentially like garbage equipment turned around? Because I agree that we don't need to take on the onus of owning the road, but we still have the liability of protecting the citizens that live on that road. So it feels like I'm fine with saying we don't own the road, we're not gonna maintain it, but it at least has to have a certain width and a certain diameter cul-de-sac so we can get our equipment in there.
Right, we don't even necessarily want to call it a road, it's a private driveway within the public right of way, but yes, you know, there's multiple scenarios. It can be a hammerhead shape. If we follow the International Fire Code for fire access, you know, you can do a cul-de-sac shape, you can do a hammerhead or a Y-type turnaround. There's
Do you
different,
have that written in there, or do we have a provision in there where it needs to pass the, our fire department's approval from a spec and design in terms of diameter and width?
yeah, well, the street standards, you know, the right of way itself would be 66 feet. But yeah, we can get more specific. There is a clause in there about fire access.
Or B.
Or B?
Yeah.
Yep, okay. Here we go. Dale? You know, the shared driveway is designed to accommodate the maneuvering and turnaround of emergency vehicles and fire apparatus in accordance with Section 503 of the International Fire Code. Yeah, there is an actual printed, you know, there are graphics that we could reference and include also.
Yeah, I mean, I think, my personal opinion, I think it looks good. I think it gives the citizens some flexibility if they're not ready to fully develop their lot and they want to split it off once or twice. And maybe that's all people want to split it off in terms of downsizing their property. And it gives them some flexibility because if you have to pull in a 1,000-foot asphalt road with a cul-de-sac on it, that's going to, you know, the cost of that versus what you're going to get for the lot may or may not be beneficial if you're trying to only subdivide once, put 1 or 2 lots on your property. What's the rest of the team think?
I agree with you. This is something that we've discussed several times at several meetings. But I know we're using a property here just as an example of what could happen if we pass this ordinance. When they have a public hearing, it'll be a different discussion than what we're having here now. All we're doing now is looking at whether this ordinance we got before us here is what we want. And personally, for what I see of it, I think it's going to help people out like the Lesticos or anybody else who wants to have a minor subdivision. And it will take care of long range planning too, because in the future, when you put more lots on there, they're going to have to put that road in.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dale. It feels like we don't have a ton of skin in the game because we don't own the road. We will only take ownership in the road once it's brought up to town specifications.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Gary Lysico would like to speak. And just a note to everyone, if you are not speaking, can you please put yourself on mute because there's a lot of back echoing that's coming through. Thank you.
Okay. Well, is there anybody from the public, even Gary, if he wants to say something here, he's welcome to say it right now.
Yes, this is Gary Lustico. Can you hear me?
Yes, very clear.
Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. Council, Liz Stockman. I've talked with Liz on this a number of times. We appreciate the assistance on this. And I think our layout is illustrative of how this would help with the costs that would be incurred initially if it was required under the current ordinance. So our lot, what we have is, and I'm the trustee of the estate. I don't live on the property itself, but I have 2 brothers, one in the northeast corner of this 80 acres, and then another brother in the northwest corner. and then another brother in the north or the southeast corner. And the purpose is to subdivide the property so that my brother Dennis, who now has a residence in the northwest corner of the 80, would have the property in the north half of the 80. And then my brother Gene, who lives on the southeast corner, he would have the property on the south of the 80. And this is just the layout we came up with working with Ms. Stockman and our engineer with the wetland delineation, that type of thing, to split the property up fairly between the two siblings. And the cost is quite excessive. And like was mentioned, you know, the city wouldn't be responsible for this until some triggering event in the future. One nephew, so the son of Dennis, he wants to build on the property. And then the original homestead is one of the lots that would be split off from the current 80 acres, parents' house. So yeah, we're very acceptable of this. I mean, our preference would be to have for the triggering event, because it would allow Gene in the south to allow one of his children to build on one of those lots. And then if they sold to some other person, then that would trigger it. I think it could be set up so that the construction talked about. Can you hear me?
Can you repeat that last part, Gary?
Yeah, and like Ms. Stockman, what you had mentioned is it's kind of unfair if you're the final person to build to have the cost of the total development of that hard paving that street up until code. I think one way to rectify that would be that all properties that benefit from the access on this road would be assessed in the normal course for the upgrade of that road. That would take the unfairness away to if you just happen to be the last person on it. I think that's something that would be fair to look at, that we were looking at, regardless of what the city would do, that would be kind of what we would do amongst ourselves. Whoever, you know, if one of the other lots got built, another child would decide to build on the land, then that would be a triggering event and everyone would share. So I think that would be, you know, in this particular case, the reason we have 3 is the old homestead, which really access onto County Road 5. So it's technically connected to this Lestico Avenue, as it's called on here, but it's really not part of this access road. 4 would allow us, both my siblings would each have one child that could use this shared driveway. It would take care of the one flag lot, which now goes to that property, the residence in the southeast corner. I think we would agree. We would ask that the sub base not be required. I mean, they're going to do I think anyone would do a decent job if they want a good driveway, but to have it not up to code, and like your city engineer, I agree, if it's 15, 20 years before you finish it off, you're gonna have to redo the sub base at that time. We would agree with, it should be up to code for fire code, you know, like was mentioned with garbage disposal. Ambulances can turn around at the cul-de-sac, so have an actual turnaround to specs. International fire code would make sense on any of these in the city. And then actual restrictions, what would have to be placed on the lots. We could easily work that out with the city attorney. I think that would be acceptable to anybody wanting to do this. So this would, I think, and we've talked to neighbors that have similar situations where they have a few family members that they might want to build on the home place, and just the cost of the upgrade to the road is excessive, and they will maintain it. You know, we will maintain it, people that live there. So I don't know what the wording would exactly be to have that final lot that triggers having the roadway built up, for that to be shared amongst all of the lots accessing off of it. You know, that wording could be put in place. So that would be one suggestion. We would ask that it would be allowed for 4 would be the triggering. And I will admit that's somewhat this case, because we have, you know, 2 people living on it. They'd like to have 1 lot each that they could develop on the situation, not more than that. If it get more than that, then I think you're starting to look at outside the family and it becomes kind of a typical subdivision. But otherwise, this would be very helpful just as a cost. And then having wording put in it that the triggering event would be shared. The cost to upgrade the road to city specs would be shared amongst whoever accesses off this driveway. I have nothing else to say otherwise.
Thank you, Gary. Was that helpful, Justin?
Jason?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I mean, I think it's semantics whether, or debatable on whether it's 3 or 4. I think that's something for between the planning and zoning and the city council to review. I also would like to understand what's the trigger point of the last one in has to pay for the road or versus, is it the landowner that owns the subdivision? So I think that's some of the things as a city council we need to, and planning and zoning, we need to review and potentially write into the requirements. I think it's an awesome first pass. I think it's something that we need to continue to look at.
Commissioner Pero here.
Okay.
I agree. Yes, there is conversation that needs to be happening in regards to how we are going to designate certain things, and there is more conversation that needs to happen. And yes, a lot of these points were very, very helpful, even different angles and ideas. I would like to take some time to review this even further now with some other details to look into, but yeah.
Okay, how do you think about it, Commissioner Wagner?
Barry?
I can't tell if he's there or not.
Barry Wagner? I don't see him.
We must have lost him.
Call in user 4 isn't on the list.
Okay, is there anybody else who'd like to make comments toward this?
Jeff, what are your thoughts?
Yes, I'd like to know, what additional questions that you and Kelly might have specifically. I mean, how do we move it forward? What specifically would you like to see discussed? I mean, in this case, because the Lesko property will be on the P&Z next month again, it's germane to obviously their situation.
Yeah. So, I mean,
I don't see the last person in having to take the whole road. If you take any gravel road here, it might be upgraded to blacktop. Those roads are shared by every benefiting property, those costs. So I would think that would be easy to write into the language, whatever the activates the requirement, all benefiting properties would share in that cost. And
yeah,
go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. It's hard based on the video to understand when you're done talking. So I apologize if I'm interrupting. But yeah, I think if that's the standard, it's like, what do we put in there as the hook to say, hey, when this thing goes asphalt and needs to be upgraded, are we going to automatically assess each resident based on what the cost of the road is? And that's how we're going to do it? Or is it the last guy in? Or is it the person that sold all the lots? He's liable for it because he's the person that theoretically should have paid for it in the first place? Or how does that work?
Well, if you take a look at, let's say, the Lesko plan that's up there right now, and lot 2 and lot 3 stayed the same, but there's a shared driveway right now.
Mm-hmm.
And lot 4 decides to break into 4 lots, 3 or 4 lots like it's shown there. Because there are multiple lots, they would pay multiple assessments. They would pay per lot. So lot 2 and lot 3 aren't paying until that road goes in, and lot 4 divides into 4 lots. They pay 4 assessments, and lot 2 and 3 each pay 1. That would be, just off the top of my head, I don't know, Liz, if that's the way typically we would do things. But if a developer came in and they were developing so many lots, they would would pay the lion's share of the development lot. If it was one more lot, then you divide it equally amongst the four.
Uh,
The way we assess roads right now, we do it by in number, not frontage.
I'm fine with that kind of verbiage written in, or that language written in from who pays, but it feels like we should have something in there in terms of how that's gonna be assessed, or it's gonna be a problem. Because if lot 1 and lot 2 have been there for 10 years, and all of a sudden lot 3 gets developed, lot 1 and lot 2 are gonna say, hey, we didn't need an asphalt road until you guys showed up, you guys paid for it.
Commissioner Piro here, and that is exactly one of my thoughts on this, is I was wondering, how are we going to put in writing the burden on the other lots that have been grandfathered in with the non-asphalt road, and how this is going to become a heated battle, even if it's not family owned and the houses get transferred to other people. How do they know that this is going to happen to them? The whole lot, 3 lots, division of 3 lots versus 4 lots. For the most part, there are not a lot of 40-acre parcels available left in Nowthen. And the ones that are larger than that typically. So dividing 4 lots seems a little excessive because you have to have, enough land to do so. And then you're getting into a large cul-de-sac situation because of our wetlands. But that was one of my biggest questions, was how are we going to burden the people after the fact? And it could be years, it could be months.
Commissioner,
Chair?
remember that this is going to be a shared driveway. It won't be a gravel road. That's significantly different than people have been living on a gravel road for 20 or 30 years, and somebody wants to come in and blacktop. This is a shared driveway. You know, when you own that lot, that should there be development, there will have to be a road. That would have to be one of, obviously, the understandings, because this would require a driveway agreement, so that we don't have somebody further up closer to the highway blocking off the people in the back because they don't want people driving by their house anymore. So there would have to be a formal driveway agreement. You buy the property, you're sharing a driveway. When a road comes in, there's going to be cost. That's one of the options.
Yeah,
Chair.
that sounds good.
Mr. Chair, this is Ms. Stockman.
He's muted.
Oh,
Dale?
Yeah,
Dale?
yeah. Yeah, am I on?
Yes.
hi. Yep, Ms.
Now.
Stockman. So that's the benefit of having a concept plan. We know how many lots total there are. And we can sort of predetermine approximately, what these assessments might be. And the other benefit is having, everything is deed restricted, so meaning it gets recorded at the county. So when you buy a lot and, you do a title search, this stuff shows up and you know what type of agreements are recorded with your land. And the comment about the number of lots, it's not the 3 or the 4 lots that require this to be paved. The subdivision now is the maximum of 3. If you have a private driveway now with these 3 lots and 1 outlot, and somebody wants to divide 1 more, then that 1 is the one that triggers this to be paved. So any future subdivision at all would trigger, and absolutely, we would work closely with our city attorney to get the appropriate language in here and the necessary agreements in place.
Okay, has anybody else got any comments to make on this?
So Liz, to move this forward, do we need to add some of that verbiage into your initial proposal so that the citizens have a pretty good idea what they're getting into if they buy into this sort of a scenario? And we have a pretty detailed understanding of what happens when we trigger past, whether the number's 3, 4, or 5 lots, how it's triggered and what the payment looks like?
Yeah, the payment's gonna be tough. We don't know what the costs are gonna be if you're, based on soil types and all sorts of things, but
I understand that, but we would understand that the payment's going to be split amongst the existing residents. It's not going to be split on the last guy in, and at least have some verbiage like that, or? What do you
yeah,
think?
absolutely. Yes, everybody that fronts would be responsible. And even lot 1, for instance, sometimes when a local street becomes available, the county may sometimes change access points and require that house to access on Lystico Avenue, especially if somebody were to tear that house down and rebuild or something. But absolutely, yeah, shared cost among all that front on the road. And I think we're definitely on the right track, and there would just be some tweaking with and working with Attorney Rupie to get this figured out. I don't know if there's anything real specific other than, just kind of the details and working with him. And then, again, checking back with Shane as far as this base and sub-base goes, and maybe if it's hard to predict or know. I mean, even if someone thought they were gonna split within the next 3 years and the sub-base and base would still be good, then, things change. So you're almost better off just waiting and doing it all at once.
My one other thought along this is looking at it from a perspective of inheritance, land, whatever. Sorry, this is Commissioner Pirro. I'm looking at lot 1, 2, and when just taking Lystico's in for example, we've got lot 1, 2, 3, and a 4. Well, I don't know that 3 can actually be split without it having a separate road and a cul-de-sac to it. Obviously not right now for any details, but it is large enough to be split. And then lot 4 is large enough to be split. So my question is how do we, for all parcels in fairness, you can't just say there's 4 lots, but lot 4 could be split into 4 lots or 5 lots, depending on how they work out the roads. So instead of it being 1 lot, it could be potentially 6 lots, 5 lots. That seems to be obviously a gray line. Why are we micromanaging that? But that then becomes a problem because this person's getting 1/4 of the charge to the land or to the paved road when they actually have 5 lots going in. I don't know how this is gonna, I don't know how to dictate this right now because I'm kind of losing some steam here, but this is one of the thoughts that I had, like, how do we divide this properly? How do we make this so that it does work for everybody if we're gonna put this verbiage in?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
There is a way too, when assessments are done to determine how many lots can be split from property. So again, we go back to some type of an approved concept plan or layout for a property like this. And, if lot 3 can be split into 3, then that person at the time of road construction is responsible for 3, and he would pass that through later potentially. It depends on the city council's policies, but we could have, in this type of a situation, we could have a little bit different policy than our assessment policies have been for, you know, street upgrades in the past. But I understand what you mean is in determining, yeah, how it's done fairly. It's probably the biggest question here is the assessment and the payment part of it and how it's, yeah, equitable.
Mr.
So-
Chair, this is Brandon Ebert. I'd like to speak.
Oh,
Yes,
Mr. Ebert,
Hi,
Yes,
this
go-
is
go
Brandon
ahead,
Ebert.
Go ahead, Brandon.
Does the fire code speak anything to the base, sub-base, as far as material or depth? You wouldn't want a fire truck coming in like on farm field dirt and getting stuck.
yes, Mr. Chair, this
Yes.
is Ms. Stockman.
Yes,
Yes, the fire code, there is a provision, and I believe it's more than 2 houses or maybe 3 that requires, yeah, certain construction standards because you're right about the weight of the vehicles as well. So that's a good point. There's some other section of that same international fire code, I believe. So, you know, I guess the weight of the vehicles is sort of lends itself to support that base and sub-base concept, but maybe there's another way to handle it too, or maybe it's somewhere in between a regular driveway and, you know, a street sub-base.
all I got to say about that is I had a fire here and the fire trucks came up to my house and they came up my driveway. And it's not up to standards.
Oh, they'll find a way if they have to, Dale. But we'd like to make it easy on them.
Yeah, well, they got it, when they make go back to Lesicos there, when they put a driveway in there, they gotta bring it up to a standard where it would handle big, things like a fire truck. They'd have to build it up that, the private driveway up that.
Right, especially in our area where we don't have public water and the tankers have to come in and turn around and cycle in and out. Yeah, absolutely critical.
Is that in part of the plan you presented to us where they have to meet the standard to hold that equipment when they put that
It
driveway
may be
in?
in that same section 503 that I referenced, but I will double check on what specifics are on that. I think there's some state law regarding how many houses can be on a shared driveway.
Okay,
So that would be another thing. I believe that's why Shane said, you know, limit it to 3 in the initial subdivision of this.
well, our lawyer would look this over before it ever got to the council, Wendy.
Oh, yeah.
So Liz, can you try to wrap us up here since it's 9 o'clock? Can we take a first pass on what, you know, I think this property here is a good like case study on what would we do if we went forward with the proposal that's in front of us. What I'm concerned about is I think it's great for 3 units. Once you flip past 3 units, who pays for what? Because Kelly has a great point on lot 3 has got 3 or 4 buildable units. Do they subdivide and pull another road into there to do that piece? So they're responsible for the main road, and then the other road, since it's 3 units off of that, would be back to gravel and it's considered a driveway. Does block 1 here pay for however many lots because it could be subdivided 4 or 5 times? I mean, part of me says, is it really the planning and zoning's issue? It could just be, hey, once it gets past 4 lots, it's got to be paved and you guys figure it out. But it feels like that's going to lead to a lot of problems for us if we don't have it defined.
But you
Well,
take,
that's partly why there was the driveway agreement or the whatever agreement, deed restriction references the ability of the city to assess if necessary. But yeah, it'd be preferable to have it all worked out. But definitely after those first three, have to be paved. And right, maybe the attorney will say it's really not the city's decision as to who pays what, but it has to be done.
So Liz, if they were to redivide after this, wouldn't it have to be platted out anyway? This is the one major subdivision, one division. But if they were to redo anything else, they would have to plat it out.
Correct, yes, it would have to be platted after that, correct.
But depending on where lot 3 would develop, they might have to put in a road anyway.
Yeah, there's question, it's questionable whether that gravel pit area is developable, but yes, if it's possible to get a road through there, we really need to get a road north and south to the property lines. Because as you know, the county limits access points onto County 5 there, so it's critical we provide access to the neighboring land if we can.
I totally understand that, but just work off the scenario that under this current plan, if they just have 3 lots, they could roll in there with a shared driveway. And now lot owner 3 decides to subdivide his property.
Right.
Does lot owner 1 and 2 have to pay to upgrade that driveway, which is now going to need to become a road so that subdivider of owner number 3 can subdivide his property?
Yeah, I believe so, that they would have to be responsible with frontage, yes. Frontage.
So my only proposal is we get some of that verbiage in there so it's pretty clear when people are.
We lost him.
Right, when people are buying a lot or when they're building, yes. Did we lose you,
Jason, are you there?
Jason?
Yep.
Yep.
Sorry about that. My phone cut it out. My proposal would be, can we put some verbiage in your proposal to understand what this payment structure would look like from a development standpoint and review it at the next meeting using this property as our case study? Because it feels like this is the one that we're going to benchmark going forward.
Yep, that sounds great.
Barry, are you okay with that? Is he online yet?
I don't see
Barry?
him anymore.
I don't think Barry's, we lost him.
Are you talking to Gary Lustico?
No.
Yeah.
No, Barry
Yes,
Wagner.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Dale, are you okay with that plan?
If we, table it until, for another meeting?
Continue it.
The proposal is Liz is going to look at what a payment, how to write some payment verbiage into this. And we're going to use this Lestico estate as a benchmark going forward at the next meeting.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. The thing is, I'm not sure what Lestico's plans are. If this would affect them at all at the next meeting.
Oh, they're okay. They'll be on the next agenda as well.
Okay. Okay.
Gary, does that sound fair to you?
Yeah, it sounds fair to me, but I know once you put the lot 1 is gonna have to go down on that driveway they propose there, because the county's not gonna let them have access out onto there. Right up here north of me, the same thing happened up here. They put a road in for they put a few more lots in there, and they had to move their driveway. County wouldn't allow them to be in. So I'm okay with it. So
Would you Would you like me to summarize the motion?
Please,
Yeah, now who's making the motion?
I'm making a motion.
To be made, okay.
I'm making a motion for Liz to continue on with the proposal that she put in place at
Wait a
the
minute.
April meeting
Wait a
with,
minute. We have to close this public hearing first.
Oh, no, Dale, you're
Yes.
continuing it.
Oh, just continue. Okay, okay.
You gotta continue it to the next meeting.
Go ahead,
Close
Jason.
it. Summarize what you're asking Liz to do. So Liz, why don't you summarize what you understood the commissioners are asking you to do?
Go ahead, Liz.
Okay. Continue the request for the ordinance change to the May meeting, looking at the triggers for payment and future subdivision, what is fair and equitable among the lot owners and for payment of the street, looking at payment structure, also the International Fire Code and access concerns regarding weights of the vehicles and emergency vehicle access. And I'd also like to add or just, discuss, this is only done once. So in other words, any future split would not be applicable for extension of this private drive. It would automatically become public road at that point. Oh, and we'll add the conversations and review by the city attorney.
Liz, would you also check on the weight restrictions for the 503 fire apparatus?
Yes, okay.
Do we have a second to this motion that Commissioner Alders made? I'll second it. Do we have any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, this
Yes,
is Dan Bryan,
yes.
citizen at the hearing. I just want to remind the body that there is no quorum at the meeting any longer.
That's what I was gonna say. We don't have Barry on there. So we can't even act upon it.
That is correct. Can they make a recommendation still, or does that have to be a motion too?
I think part of the discussion, Liz can do the research.
Right.
Because
There's
you don't have
no,
a- you don't have a quorum, you can't actually close the public hearing either, so we'll have to clarify, but I believe that it will continue to be open.
right. I believe you're fine to continue it. You're not making a decision on anything.
sounds perfect, which is what we were asking for in the first place, right? Just to continue on where we are with some more information.
Correct. Officially
Right.
continuing the meeting
Yep.
rather than closing.
Right.
Question is, we poll, no, we can't. We don't have a quorum anymore.
But we don't need a vote on this. We're just asking Liz to do some more research and bring it back next meeting.
Okay.
Right.
And then,
And the public hearing will remain open and continued until the May meeting.
yeah, we can't even make a motion on that.
Don't have to, just
Yes,
can't.
we have to.
Huh?
We
We don't
have,
have to.
yeah.
We don't have a quorum, so we can't do it.
Yes, we have to do something. We can't just not do anything. So it either has to be continued,
Yeah.
it has to be continued if you can't vote on it.
Well,
Yeah.
there's three of us that could vote. I mean, okay, well,
If we can't legally close it, then isn't it automatically continued?
Exactly. So
Right.
it's automatically
That's-
continued, and Liz is gonna bring some more information next month.
I believe it is automatically continued, yes.
So there doesn't need to be a motion made. The recommendations have already been made. Liz has them summarized, and we'll just
we won't
have
close
a
the meeting.
vote to adjourn the meeting, maybe. Or maybe we don't.
The
need
bigger issue is how do we get out of the meeting? Because we can't make a motion.
Right.
Why don't you, well,
Can Jeff?
I'll make a motion.
Can Jeff
Actually,
be the decision maker?
You've got 3 people. And right now, we only have 6 people seated on the commission.
So
So
it'd
you
be a
have
tie.
with 3 people, you have a quorum because you've got 3 out of 6.
Okay.
Okay.
We aren't officially 7 right now, so.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and we have a second to this now.
Yeah, we had Jason motioned and Dale seconded, so take the 3 votes and
And
then
that's to continue the hearing.
continue it, right?
Okay, we'll call for the vote then.
Jason Elders,
Approve.
Dale Ames,
Approved.
Mary Wagner is not here. Kelly Perro,
Approved.
Meeting's adjourned.
So you continue the hearing now, you can talk about adjourning the meeting.
I didn't catch you. You cut out there.
I said, so you continued that public hearing until May. Now you can talk, you can make a motion for adjourning this.
Okay, okay.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, the meeting's adjourned then.
Thank you for everybody that attended and insisted and commented.
I will say this, it helps to have you guys all up there pictures so we can see when you're talking and who it is.
do I need to take roll call on the adjournment vote?
I
I don't know.
don't know.
The city council don't do the city
It's not
council.
debatable.
I- All right. We'll just assume everyone's saying yes.
Perfect. See you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Good night.